of affordable housing in the country, in the province. But I also feel that persons with disabilities, like physical, mental, or developmental disabilities, although we have not spoken about it at all, are not being accorded the same attention. And I want to ask each one of you, not based on how you are better than the other candidate, but what you as a person feel are you going to be able to do, that if you are elected, what will each one of you do to resolve this inequality for people with disabilities in your riding? Thank you.
Jose, I'll start with you.
This is a great point, and I think at the bottom line of all of this is we need to look at how we treat each other. At the moment, we're treating each other, as you point out, not in a fair or egalitarian way. And what I'd like to see more, and I advocate for that, is for a situation where people with different abilities not only can have access to the services that we all take for granted, but most importantly, that we can design new programs to ensure the longevity of people. Because that, I think, is the thing that worries me the most. If you are the parent of a child that has a different ability, what will happen to your child when you're no longer there to protect them? And I think it's the mark of a civilized society, how we look after everybody, and particularly those that require special care. And to me, what I'd like to see more is the integration of people into the urban habitat that we all share. So people can have new arrangements for work-life balances. And that to me is very dear to my heart. And if I'm elected, that's something I will work very hard and consult with people like you, Sujit, to see in which direction I need to go. Because my area of expertise is not that one. But I can consult with people and work with whomever is in power. As Paul say, if the leader doesn't matter, and I'm glad he said that, then a person like me that has interdisciplinary training and can work with people from other parties could be very useful for Markham Stouffville, because that is what we need now. This is a very important election that will define the future of our province. And to me, nobody should be left behind, and everybody should be treated well.
Thanks, Jose. Helena?
Yes. Well, in my opening statement, I made reference to my first contact with individuals with developmental disabilities and understanding that it wasn't just a requirement for medical care, but also for social supports. And during my time as Minister of Community and Social Services, that goal of social inclusion was always uppermost in my mind. And we are making great strides in this regard. We have now closed the sheltered workshops, as I think you know. And the alternative is for many individuals with developmental disabilities to find paid employment, sometimes part-time, but they are such excellent employees. They deserve to be paid appropriately for their work. They are loyal. They're happy to be in their work. And businesses find that the turnover is so much lower with individuals with developmental disabilities. We've made great strides in housing. All sorts of alternative models are being looked at in terms of including individuals with developmental disabilities, not just in a group home model, but more in supported living in settings such as seniors buildings and other types of accommodation. Sometimes it's friendly neighbors. And we have developed a really comprehensive plan to ensure that there is that full inclusion. We're putting some $1.9 billion over the next few years towards the care of those with developmental disabilities.
Thanks, Helena.
Paul? obviously a very good question. One of the first meetings I had after the election was called with representative of homes in this area, and one of the things that they stressed to me was that their operating budgets had been frozen since 2007, and that they had wanted additional funding. And I found that I was very surprised at that, given the fact that the federal government had made historic transfers of about 6% a year. So I think we can certainly do better. I think there are organizations that work very well. The Center for Dreams in our community is another organization that works very well. We have to turn to those organizations that are doing a good job already, see how we can support them, get them to help us do services in other communities. I think we'd all agree. I know Helena has been also a good supporter of the Center for Dreams. They're a wonderful facility that help people. We've said that the government will provide $1.9 billion for mental health issues, increased funding for mental health issues in the community. And I know, just a drop in the bucket, but look, as your member of Parliament, I had a Hockey Night in Stouffville initiative which raised in excess of $300,000 for children's mental health at Markham Stouffville Hospital. I know it's a drop in the bucket in comparison to what we need, but again, it goes back to we can have a role to play locally as members of Parliament in our community. We can advocate for those things, and I tell one other area where I think we're going to have to really focus on is autism services and make sure that that we at the earliest stages we return that funding and we support families as best we can.
Thank you. Kingsley, and then our next question will go over.
Here is that I'm talking about affordable housing. Okay, not Center for Dreams is a day program. I know them very well. I'm talking about affordable housing for people with disabilities. Thank you.
Kingsley, any additional comments?
Thanks, Pat. It's Mr. Sujit Sachin, right? Thank you for bringing up your question. You know what? No one ever thinks about disability until their parent got really sick, until someone gets into a catastrophic accident, or a child is born with some disability. No one ever thinks about that stuff. And so some people are lucky enough to have insurance, and then you realize that if you rely on cancer drugs, even if it's 97% coverage, you really wish that 3% you have that coverage as well. But anyway, just to you were talking about affordable housing and disabled. It's an area that is not my expertise on, but I can tell you from what I understand in areas like Scarborough or various parts of Toronto, there's a long waiting list, and then you kind of on your fingertips and tenterhooks can kind of say that, oh, I wish, or I really wish to know that that operator is the right one, is going to provide that tender love and care. So it's a really complex set of consideration to take, and there are not enough of them. And so, if whether it's a municipal government or provincial government can support operating affordable housing, especially towards seniors and towards those with disabilities, that would help a big deal.
Thank you, sir. Your question. If you could say your name, please.
Sure. My name is Anand Date. I'm a longtime resident of Stouffville, and I wanted to thank all of our candidates to come and speak to us today. This question is for all candidates. It's a question regarding budgetary priorities. What is your stance on budgetary funding for social facilities such as libraries, sporting facilities, food pantries, food banks, and the programming they provide as a community hub and source of information and support? Thank you.
Paul, I'll start with you.
Ultimately, those are services that are provided by your local municipality, and it's the local municipality that has to make a decision on how much it will fund for libraries and the services that you talked about. But it really goes back to the question that we had earlier with respect to your commercial property tax base. When we run out of if we're in a situation, especially in Stouffville, where our property tax base is going to be doubling, in the next number of years, unless we find additional commercial space, there will be less resources available for pools. There will be less resources available for arenas and libraries. That's why it's so important that we give our municipalities the tools to succeed and create bigger tax bases. And that is a real problem right here in Stouffville. It can also go. It also stems back to the very real issue of budgeting and deficits in the province of Ontario. When you're running a budgetary deficit of $12 billion, when you're spending $1 billion a month just to pay the interest, it leaves a heck of a lot of very little room to make other investments, and that's why we have to get that under control. But again, when you really bring it back down, the community will only have the resources that it needs to invest if you unleash the potential in the community, and that means having a balance of commercial and residential property tax base, and then electing people who share your focus on what the community should have.
Kingsley, next.
Thanks, Pat. Thanks for following me on Twitter this morning. Good luck in your campaign. I don't know him, but I just read about him this morning on Twitter. You asked about hubs. I have to disagree with the previous speaker. I think for provincial government, Helena, correct me if I'm wrong, I think there is a pool of money to support community hubs. Whether it is tying in elementary school, kindergarten to, for example, in-school daycare, or early childhood learning centers, or a hub in a healthcare facility or a social services agency, and then have training facilities and other tie-ins. I think there are opportunities to access those provincial funds to have hubs. And then if there are employment lands that are waiting to be developed, one can think about, okay, are those employment lands appropriate for community hubs? And with community hubs, then we can talk about, hey, got community hubs, small families, you want to start a family here, you can do that. And here right in Stouffville.
Thank you. Jose?
Just to add a little bit to the conversation, and it goes back to Sujit's point earlier about affordable housing. The problem that we have is that governments are no longer leading, they're following. And if you want to pay the bill, you have options, right? And the best way to be profitable is to decrease your costs, because it's within the control of your operation usually. And governments forget this at all levels, municipal, federal, and provincial. Very proud to be a resident in Markham, because I've seen what Markham's been doing with Markham District Energy, with some of the Panam buildings that are powered by solar rather than natural gas. And that is the strategy I think we need to espouse. It's to actually bring costs down by avoiding altogether the problem. That is where we are at right now. So I gave you the example earlier that even in the David Suzuki School here in Markham, the principal cannot send the children to the Bob Hunter Memorial Park because they don't have money to pay for the bus. So what is the cost of the bus? Well, there's an asset cost to actually buy a bus, but the fuel itself, it's becoming a problem. Don't believe me? You do believe me, because you've been filling up in the gasoline stations. So we're destroying the planet, and we're not even having fun while we're doing that. So we need to change that equation, and government has a role to play to lead by example.
Helena?
Well, community hubs are just a great idea. Not only are they convenient for people accessing services, but they also foster a sort of a cross-fertilization between the various organizations that come together. And whether a municipality takes the lead or various provincial organizations, the result can really be excellent. If you think about Markham Stouffville Hospital, it's access to the community center next door with the library, with all sorts of sporting facilities. That is, in essence, a community hub. Our government reversed the downloading. I hope everyone remembers the Harris government downloaded a number of costs that were provincial onto municipalities, such as social assistance costs, land ambulance, public health. We reversed that downloading. So there is some municipal tax room to provide services more locally. That's what the property tax is intended to do. This is obviously, you mentioned libraries. We have increased funding to libraries from the provincial government through the years, and we have promoted hubs where there's a provincial organization that has taken the lead, such as a community health center. I know there's a proposal floating around for an urgent care center here in Stouffville. Markham Stouffville Hospital has had this idea for some time. That could potentially be the core of a hub for a number of different services that could surround it, physically located together. And as I said before, if you go in for one service, you may get the idea to perhaps access some of the others. So more power to you in promoting that idea.
Thank you. I do want to allow our candidates an opportunity, each one of them, to be able to sum up all their comments at the end of this evening. So I'm going to have a few more questions as well, but then I'll want that opportunity for all our candidates. Ma'am, if you could state your name.
Hi, my name is Kim Nasello. I live in Markham, but I don't own a business, but I'm just here because I want to listen to all the candidates. But I do have a question for all the candidates, but especially for Mr. Paul and Ms. Helena. So I am a government worker. So with both your platforms is that you want to privatize government stores and businesses. So Paul, you've been saying that you wanted to balance the budget, that it's $12 million in debt. And I work for LCBO, which brings in $2.06 billion that goes back into the government. So when that happens, when you privatize, then where are you going to get that 2.06, as well as you, Helena? Where are you going to get that 2.06 billion? It's not an M, it's a B. $1 billion to put back into Ontario. That money is free. It's coming in free because I have helped make that money with LCBO. So now you are no longer making that money.
Well, I'll just say it's not in our platform to privatize the LCBO, but I'll say this: the money is not free. It's tax money. It's the people who go out and go to Stouffville Main Street and buy beer or buy liquor. They pay large amounts of taxes on that product, and that revenue comes to the taxpayer of Ontario. So I'll disagree with you in saying that it's free. It is a very important revenue source. I don't know of any of the candidates up here that are suggesting that we're going to eliminate taxes on spirits and beer and spirits, beer and wine at all, and it's certainly not in our platform right now to privatize the LCBO. We have so many other issues that we have to deal with that are far more important in the short term. We have to deal with hydro, we have to deal with affordability, we have to bring the budget back into balance by eliminating programs and services that don't work, finding efficiencies in those programs. We're going to look at things like drive clean, eliminating drive clean. 99% of the cars passed. There's no reason why the government should be paying for that service. We'll look at other avenues to bring in affordability, but I'm not aware of any of the parties that have suggested that they're going to privatize the LCBO or eliminate the taxes on the spirits on spirits, beers, and wine.
And also, as you were directing your question to Helena, if you want to respond. Yeah. Everybody will have that opportunity.
We certainly have no intention to privatize the LCBO. It certainly has been analyzed very, very carefully. And as you've indicated, the revenue stream is such that we would not want to interfere with what is an extremely well-run organization. In fact, we're using the LCBO model, as you know, here in Ontario, to sell cannabis in a controlled environment with the expertise of the workers there who know exactly how to ID people and ensure that they are appropriate consumers of the product. That's all I can say. We are not privatizing LCBO.
Kingsley.
Thanks, Pat. Thanks, Kim. It's not just LCBO, right? But I think that's what you're saying. I mean, no, the entity is not going to privatize LCBO, but I think your subtext is, are you going to privatize anything else? I think there are enough good middle-class jobs that are in the public sector. If you sell it off, maybe they will become contract jobs, and maybe they will become freelance jobs. I hope there are a lot more Amazon 2 out there that will come to the Greater Toronto and Hamilton area to take over $2 billion or similar amounts of revenue if we have to privatize the LCBO or government operations.
Jose?
Yeah, so the subtext is how we organize our society. I alluded earlier to the problem with the Pickering nuclear power plant. I know numbers are not something people want to hear about, but 10 times more money that you mentioned, Kim, it's going into the repair of the Darlington and Bruce nuclear power plants. We're talking on the order of $20 to $30 billion. This decision, which is supported, and you haven't told me, Kingsley, what your position is on this. It's supported by the other two parties.
I'm not supposed to interrupt you, is what I didn't answer.
That's okay. Sometimes it's okay to interrupt each other. The point of the story is that right there is $20-30 billion hole that we're creating, right? Gigantic. You alluded $2 billion for LCBO, and the cap and trade is bringing in $1 to $2 billion right there. So we need to have a grown-up discussion of how we're going to run the province. And at the moment, what we have is a lot of sloganeering and magician tricks. What I'd like to see is actually people that analyze this from a grown-up perspective, and most importantly, that open the opportunity for community-level decision-making. I started by saying that I'm a politician because the system needs to change. We cannot keep doing more, the same, and expect somehow magically different results are going to come out of the same approach. So I'm going to leave it at that to give more time to everybody.
Thank you. Sir, if you want to come up to the mic and ask your question. He actually had an opportunity earlier, so I do want to let this gentleman have his opportunity, and then we'll finish with you quickly, sir.
Thank you. It's David Barthok. I'm a Stouffville resident. My question is to do with our youth. Our children today need all the opportunities to start school properly. And one of the things that I'm passionate about, like to have a student learn today, he needs to have all the capabilities to be able to do that. Why in our society do we not make it mandatory for them to have vision and hearing tests? We make vaccination and immunization mandatory. I know there is, OHIP does cover testing on a yearly basis if they're under 18, it could be 21. But why do we let students go to school unprepared, especially when 1 in 5 children have a vision problem? They do not know they've got a vision problem. And this is something that I'm a member of the Stouffville Lions Club, and we have been doing screenings in town for the last 17 years, and we're planning on doing it again this year. It's one of those things that if a child can't see, a child can't hear. And it's one of those things that if it's caught early enough, the corrective measurements are so much better and easier.
Helena, we'll start with you.
Well, thank you, David, and I know about your passion for this. And I think, first of all, you're right. Children deserve the very best start in life, and we need to ensure that parents understand that they can have their children tested. It is available. It is covered. Maybe we should make it part of the postnatal package when you leave the hospital with your baby, because obviously the testing is available, thanks to the Lions for doing it on a volunteer basis as well. But we do have another opportunity to observe children because part of our budget is ensuring that there will be free childcare from 2.5 to age 4, and then of course moving into full-day kindergarten. So there will be another opportunity perhaps for caregivers to observe if there's any difficulty at all, and perhaps speak to the parent and say, have you noticed that there's an issue? But I agree with you. The word mandatory is very strong, and I see you've obviously given it considerable thought. It's always worth having discussions on this, but I think the first move is to ensure everybody knows what services are available. Paul?
I remember when I was much younger, we used to do that in school, and honestly, I hadn't thought about it until you asked the question. You're right, my children never had this, and the reason I know a little bit about this is because my youngest daughter certainly had some difficulty, and we didn't realize what the issue was until we had her vision tested. And it had manifested itself in the middle of the school year, frankly. At the beginning of the school year, when she was tested when we were getting her glasses, you can see I now wear them, there wasn't an issue. Halfway through the school year, there was an issue. So honestly, I don't have an issue with either vision or hearing. I guess the only issue is we've got to make sure that we have the resources and the money available where there are areas that don't have an active Lions Club such as yourself in order to do that, or perhaps we can incentivize social service groups such as yours to actually do this in other parts of the province. I think it's a great idea, and I have no trouble advocating for that at all.
Kingsley.
Thank you to the Stouffville Lions Club for having done this for 17 years. Thank you very much. I get it. I am nearsighted, quite, because I could afford the thinning of the lenses. I don't wear, the Coke glasses type of the glasses. And so unfortunately, my son is already wearing glasses. He's only in grade 4. And when he was younger, we had to make use of a speech communications disorder assistants who worked with speech language pathologists to learn listening and then speaking, because oftentimes you have. Good thing my pediatrician, or my son's pediatrician, got that assessment and then got him sent for an auditory assessment to then say, we should kind of get these services. And unfortunately, it was covered. So for eye care, it was the McGuinty government that delisted optometry exams. I work in a hospital. A lot of the auditory programs have been privatized, and a lot of speech and language pathologists are looking for work, and they have to go to school boards to find a regular job. And guess what? In a school board, there's only like 1 or 2 or 3. There are not enough of them, and we're still having children. And for communities like in York region, where the population is growing, we need those professionals to provide those services. And so, yes, absolutely, Paul, it's absolutely about resources. It's not just, otherwise the Lions Club wouldn't be doing this. Mandatory, yes, because in immunization, they are mandatory. Otherwise, the kids can't go to school. So if
Thank
only
you,
to
Kingsley. We're going to move it on to Jose to answer the question. Then we're going to have a final quick question, and then what I'd like to do next is to have each of our candidates wrap up. Jose, if you have any comments on this?
To keep it very brief about this, to me, this has to do a lot with poverty. You've been talking about a number of issues, and to me, the bottom line is this. We have a system right now that if you are a person working, for example, part-time, it's very difficult for your children and yourself to have access to the dentist, to the optometrist, etc. And what we need is to look at this problem from a different perspective. I alluded earlier that taxing pollution creates an excess of money on the treasury. And what we should do with that excess of money is what the folks from Germany are doing, that have made it possible for people that work part-time to have benefits. So then you are in a situation where, at least if you're working part-time, you can actually have access to the type of benefits that full-time workers have. To me, this is a situation of being penny-wise and dollar-full. And the best example I can give you is that my wife is a high school teacher. And when she started teaching in 1991 in Sutton, here, just north of here, the cafeteria was owned by the Family Studies Department. So therefore, they could deal with issues of hunger themselves because it was a not-for-profit thing. Now, fast forward to the future, all the cafeterias are, or the most of them, are owned by Aramark, a U.S. corporation. How the heck did we get into that? And we need to analyze that.
Thank you. Quick question, sir, and we'll let our candidates respond, and then we'll have all our candidates sum up.
Okay, earlier the Conservative candidate alluded to uploading of subways, because we're talking public services and public jobs. You did not mention the maintenance of the track workers, subway mechanics, whatnot. If you privatize that, that's 2,000 jobs that you're cutting. If you're looking for efficiencies, it's job cuts. Your leader has not put out a full platform, so it's hard for everybody to be informed as to exactly what your services are. For public-private partnerships, the 407 extension out to Oshawa was 6 months overdue. SNC Lavalin walked away from the Union Pearson Express building of it quarter way through construction. And we all know about the Bombardier streetcars in Toronto being severely delayed.
Your question, sir, yep. Please. Yep.
But yet, the SNC Lavalin and Bombardier were awarded a 30-year contract on the Eglinton Crosstown LRT. So why are we continuing to push public-private partnerships when they don't deliver?
Nobody is talking about privatizing the TTC or at all. It's just about the decision-making process so that we don't wait 5, 10, 15, 20 years to have a decision of whether we'll have a Scarborough subway or an LRT. That's been the problem with getting these routes built, is we have a council for the most part in Toronto that can't make a decision, and when it does, it usually reverses that decision. So if we want to get those that transit and transportation built, we believe that the best way to do that is through uploading that to the province. We've said very clearly, though, that the funds that are generated through the TTC will still stay with the City of Toronto. The workers will still be the same workers who are doing the job right now and do it very well. With respect to efficiencies, I find it hard to believe that even if I challenged you, you couldn't find for me some savings in the budget of whether it's the Toronto Transit Commission, whether it's GO Train, that you couldn't find efficiencies in how our hospitals are run, how our community services are delivered. We know that there are efficiencies in Jose might get mad at me, but I don't think somebody who buys a $120,000 Tesla car should get $14,000 back from the government of Ontario. I think that's wrong. I think we should eliminate Drive Clean. I think we could do a better job of regulating public-private partnerships, frankly. We did it federally. We were acknowledged by the Auditor General for having a great program. We did it before, when Dalton McGuinty was the Premier. We cooperated in that, but somehow over the last number of years, we've allowed, it seems like when the federal government wasn't involved, Ontario kind of lost its way. So we
Paul,
can do better.
We're going to give our other candidates an opportunity as well. Kingsley?
Thanks, Pat. Wasn't going to say much because... but then when you talk about efficiency in hospitals, and when your leader, Mr. Ford, talks about efficiency in hospitals, I work in a hospital. And Pat works in a hospital, and I can tell you, every hospital worker and CEO will tell you when this current government is saying 0% increase for the last 10 years, except for this year, we were feeling the cuts. Efficiency is just another word for cutting a bed here, long waiting times, and so efficiency is, the hospitals are already, efficient. So I don't know how much, when your leader talks about and a few, I don't even remember how many percent. Every year, a hospital, whether it's Markham Stouffville Hospital or any other community hospital, they look for millions of dollars of efficiency every year in their budget already. So I don't know how many more millions of dollars Markham Stouffville Hospital can take. Case in point, whenever there's a flu season, the emergency department is jam-packed, and now the current government is saying they have to open up the mothballed Humber River Hospital to allocate each floor to every York Region hospital so that they can add extra patients into that mothball hospital. That's not efficient.
Thanks, Kingsley. Jose, comments?
Well, case of the emperor has no clothes, right? And to me, this is a story. Brian, SNC Lavalin. SNC Lavalin has been banned by the World Bank to bid in any project in the planet for the next 10 years because of the outrageous shenanigans that they have done internationally. This is a firm that if it was a real private sector firm, it would be sunk a long time ago. But it's a slush fund of corporate welfare. And it's the same guys that are fixing the nuclear power plant, by the way. And at a cost of how much? Who knows? Because every time they start throwing money at that hole, they say, oh, it's dangerous, we need more money, it's not fixed. Oh, it's late, sorry, we need more money, and so on and so forth. The Darlington nuclear power plant, just so you know, it was supposed to cost $3.7 billion. I remember because I came to Canada to study energy systems back in the day. Ended costing $14.7 billion in 1992. And now, that same plant, they want to fix it. It didn't even last a few decades, and it needs to be repaired and redone again to the cost of how many tens of billions of dollars? We don't know, because the government has allowed SNC Lavalin, a company that is banned worldwide, to actually do this. How did we get to this? It's because there is no accountability in Queen's Park. Politicians are no longer serving the needs of the community. And that's what you get with me. I will be right here in Markham Stouffville for the duration of my tenure. And I will respond to you to these type of questions like Brian. But how many of you knew this, that SNC Lavalin, it's a delinquent international? Well, Brian knew. I'll rest it at that.
Thanks, Jose. Helena.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for the question, and clearly there's a place for publicly delivered services as well as private-public partnerships. Markham Stouffville Hospital was delivered on time, on budget, actually exceeded expectations with that consortium. So clearly there needs to be a review of each project. Companies need to be assessed in terms of their performance, and that kind of record needs to be built in if they should seek another proposal for a bill. There is accountability at Queen's Park. I want to assure everyone that every year, before every budget, there is a full and complete program review. I've been through it. I've been the Minister of Community and Social Services, and most recently the Minister of Health. Every single program is looked at, and we look for efficiencies. And what that really means is it a duplication? Is it having the outcomes that we expect? And you know what? We've cancelled programs when we found that they are not fulfilling the purpose for which they were originally intended. So I will have to agree with Kingsley when we hear Mr. Ford talk about cuts, or we hear him talk about efficiency. We are talking about cuts. He cannot do what he's saying he wants to do. He's saying he's going to improve services. He's saying he's going to reduce taxes. He's scrapping the carbon tax, a source of revenue, and yet he's going to balance the budget. I mean, this strains credulity. I don't think anyone can possibly take it seriously. The only way to achieve his efficiencies is through cuts.
Surely, Patty, you can let us debate this just a little bit further. I'm sorry, we can't allow the debate to end on such a ridiculous notion. A Liberal member of Parliament who last year...
I'll give you a minute, but you can also have the opportunity to be able to do this in your wrap-up, sir.
A Liberal member of Parliament who last year promised a surplus, then presented a budget to deficit of $6 billion, but then it's actually closer to $12.2 billion. You're completely off in all your projections. The NDP, who in their own platform have said that they're going to find $3.9 billion of efficiencies, but I guess it's different when you talk about it, Kingsley. But the
not so different if you're talking about uncosted budget.
You know what, guys? Everybody, I'm going to stop you there. Excuse me. I'm going to stop you there. Thank you. I do want to provide everybody the opportunity to sum up, what they wish to conclude the end of the night with. Kingsley, I will give you your time to sum up your position.
Thanks, Pat. Families are feeling the squeeze. Life after 15 years of the current government, it feels like it's getting harder. I'm not confident about the other government that wants to be in power. I think we can stop settling for bad to worse. I think it's time for a change for the better. One other thing I want to remind everyone: this current government is a majority government. So if the polls are going the way it is, we might be stuck with another majority government. Think about that. So if you want to park your vote, if you want to consider a third choice, if you want to consider someone who hasn't been in politics before, someone who's raising a young family, someone who's an immigrant, consider me as your member of Provincial Parliament. Consider the Ontario New Democrats as your party of choice. Get some fresh air. Change for the better.
Thanks, Kingsley. Jose?
So, if you're dissatisfied with the status quo, if you believe that democracy needs to be nurtured because it actually is the most important governance system that we have created for ourselves, if you feel that your voice is no longer heard because the politicians that have preceded us have become a little too focused on their party brand as opposed to what your opinions are. I invite you to think completely out of the box. And of course, then I have to say, vote for me, right? But the point of the story is this. A lot of people say, Jose, why would I vote for the Greens? You will not form government. Well, I'm not in La La Land and believe that we will form government. Chances are there'll be a few of us elected because we have something useful for you, which is called honesty, which is called good background preparation, and most importantly, the ability to listen to the community. That's what you'll get with a guy like me. I'm not beholden to anybody. I'm my own person. And our party, the Green Party, that's the way it's run. Last thing, if I may, is this. In British Columbia, a guy just like me, Andrew Weaver, which is also like me, a tenured professor, decided to do the same thing that I'm doing right now. And he got elected on the first trial. And he made history in British Columbia. And then in the last election, 2 more were elected. and they now have the first green coalition government in this country. Is that possible here? Yes, it is. We can do better. Please make history in June 7th.
Thanks, Jose. Helena, if you want to sum up.
It's been an absolute honor and privilege to represent the people here in Stouffville and Markham for the last 10 years as MPP. There are many parts to the job, and one of the ones that I'm really proud of is the work done by my constituency office. We have people coming in all the time with problems that worry them, that concern them. Sometimes it's something's very simple, not just like getting your name change on a birth certificate. I've tried to ensure that the culture in our constituency office is one of helping people, of doing their very best to ensure that your issues are listened to and that people get the help that they deserve. The other part, of course, is being part of a government. And in the 10 years I have been your MPP, I can tell you that I've come to learn that government is incredibly complicated. There are so many issues. There are so many competing priorities. But what I believe is that our government has done an amazing job in building this province up. You can see the infrastructure improvements. Just look at the increase in GO Transit. Look at the new station over at Bloomington, the new GO Train station already operational at Gormley. These services were planned, they were executed, and they will benefit our residents. In terms of the healthcare services and educational services, I'm sure you're fully aware. We have increased the healthcare budget each and every year, and we are going to do more. The healthcare system is very complicated. You increase in one area, and then you need to think about the impact in another area. These are not simple solutions, not given to slogans. They require careful thought. I believe our government has a great track record. We want to continue serving the people of Ontario. We believe in care. We do not believe in cuts to services. We want every Ontarian to fulfill their full potential.
Thank you, Helena. Paul, our last candidate to sum up.
Thank you again, and thank you to both chambers for hosting us tonight, and for everybody who came, and to the candidates for it's been a very spirited and lively debate. Look, this election for me it's all about affordability. It's about putting our province back on the right track. The NDP or neither the NDP or the Liberals, have a plan to bring our budget back into balance, and they think that is acceptable. They think it's acceptable to run multi-billion-dollar deficits forever. We've been down this road once before with the NDP when they spent us almost into bankruptcy in only 5 years, and now we're at a point with the Liberal government where we're about to hit a debt wall, $350 billion. There is no government in the world, no sub-sovereign government in the world that is poorer than the province of Ontario, more in debt than the province of Ontario. I don't think it's caring when you have a 35-year wait list to get into the Ehong Centre. I don't think it's caring when it's 8 years to get into Parkview or 143 years to get into Monshong and north in Richmond Hill. I don't think that's a caring society. I think we can do better. I think we can unleash the potential of this province. I think we can make the appropriate investments in infrastructure that will get our province moving again. I think we can put more money back into the pockets of hardworking Ontario families. They've both said, Kingsley himself said, and you've all felt this, it is very, very expensive. When you go to the grocery store, the cost of everything has gone up. Gas prices have gone up. Hydro has gone up. Water has gone up. And that's in the context of a budget that has spent $12 billion more than it has brought in. Is life easier for you that you're now in debt $350 billion? I don't think it is. I think we can do better, and that's why I'm running, because I know that we can do better. I've done it before at the federal level, and I look forward with your vote of confidence to getting the job done again at Queen's Park. Thank you.
Thank you. I have to say, clearly, there could be so much more discussion and debate and more time than we obviously have, and many more questions. I certainly want to thank Sylvia Torres as well from the Torres Real Estate Group as well, and her partners in helping this evening. On behalf of the Whitchurch Stouffville Chamber of Commerce, Markham Board of Trade, I want to thank all our candidates for your participation. I want to thank our audience members as well. My name is Patty Tamlin from Whistle FM. We were able to broadcast live to your community as well this evening. And if you have any further questions, certainly reach out to people to have those questions answered. More importantly, might I say that on June 7th, your vote is important. You have listened to the candidates this evening. You've listened to some of their positions, and I thank you very much for asking the questions that you have. Other people were able to hear those answers, and please vote on June 7th. It's extremely important. Thank you very much, and good night.
From the audience, I think a lot of the audience questions were very well thought out. The people who came to the microphone waited a long time and really had something to ask, and I think the candidates did a good job of answering it. It'll be interesting to listen to the broadcast over again.
Yeah, no, it was, I thought it was a really good way of positioning everything in terms of getting the candidates out to meet people. And as we discussed this morning when we were doing Stouffville Now, that there's just a huge shift going on about, do you vote for the leader, do you vote for the candidate? There's so many different ways of approaching the whole discussion.
I think you're right, Bob, and I think it's one of those things in Canadian politics where our system is maybe getting a little old and tired. I heard people talking in the lobby this evening about how difficult it is when they like a specific candidate, but they would rather vote for a different party. And maybe I think that's something that will change in the years to come.
Yep. Anyway, I think we should wrap it up. It's just about 9:30 in the evening, and now comes the next big challenge, getting everything turned back on at the station again.
Yeah, well, it's been a great night. I'm glad to see that there were a couple of hundred people that turned out to this meeting. There could have been more, considering that there's 44,000 people in the Stouffville area. But it's nice to see that this is starting to build the momentum that it needs to build before June 7th. And like Patty said, the big push is that everyone needs to get out and everyone needs to cast their vote.
And with that, we're going to take you back to the studio and more music at 102.9 WhistleFM.com.